Okay, so let's talk about something we all went through, the pandemic, right? It basically forced this massive, unplanned experiment on the entire world of education. I mean, almost overnight, classrooms just vanished, and everything went screen to screen. And ever since, there's been this one huge question hanging in the air. What did that actually do to learning?
Yeah, it's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? For students, for parents, for teachers, everyone wants to know. Did this whole global shift to online learning help, or did it hurt? Well, you're probably not going to be surprised to hear the answer isn't a simple yes or no. The real story, the interesting stuff, is hidden in the data. So let's dig in. To find that answer, we're going to turn to this really fascinating study that treated this whole period like what it was, a giant experiment. Researchers looked at student performance before, during, and after the pandemic to see what the numbers could tell them. So the research we're diving into is super specific, which is great for getting clear answers. We're looking at 645 university students over at Al Ain University in the UAE. And here's the cool part. The researchers got their hands on performance data from three totally distinct periods. You've got the before times with traditional in-person classes, then the mandatory online classes during the pandemic, and finally the return to in-person classes after. This whole setup gives us this really unique, complete picture of what went down. All right, so throughout this explainer, you're going to see two key acronyms. F2F stands for face-to-face, just traditional in-person classes, and OL stands for online learning, which were those remote classes that pretty much defined the pandemic era. So just keep those two in your head. F2F is in-person and OL is online. They're going to be key to understanding what's coming up next. So, to figure out which format was actually better, the researchers couldn't just look at grades in one single way. Nope, they had to split their analysis in two. And this is where a really fascinating, kind of weird contradiction popped up. It's really a tale of two different types of grades. Think of it like this. On one hand, you have the SGPA, or semester grade point average. You can think of that like a semester sprint. It's just a snapshot of how a student did in one specific semester. But then you've got the GPA, the overall grade point average. That's the academic marathon, the long-term average of their performance across their entire university career. And that distinction, it is absolutely crucial. Okay, so when the researchers looked at that short-term picture, the semester sprint, the data showed a pretty clear trend. Students generally got better grades in face-to-face classes. So, on a semester-by-semester basis, in-person learning was the clear winner. But, and this is a big but, that is only half the story. Because when they switch to that long-term view, the academic marathon, the entire result just flips on its head. I mean, completely. The data showed that students' overall GPAs were actually higher during the online learning period. So wait a minute, better short-term grades in person, but better long-term performance online? How is that even possible? That contradiction, that puzzle, led the researchers to the next logical question. If the format alone doesn't explain this, what else is going on? Maybe the answer wasn't about how students were learning, but about who the students were. And when they started digging into the demographics, bam, two factors just jumped right out with remarkable consistency, and it didn't matter what the learning format was. The data revealed two very, very clear patterns when it came to a student's gender and their chosen field of study. First up, gender. The data here was totally unequivocal. Female students consistently achieved higher academic performance than their male counterparts. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. It held true across face-to-face learning and online learning, both before, during, and after the pandemic. A really solid pattern. The second clear pattern they found was in the student's academic major. So the researchers grouped them into two big categories. You've got STEM, that's science, tech, engineering, and math, and HSS, which is humanities and social sciences. And just like we saw with gender, the pattern was super consistent. HSS students consistently pulled higher grades than STEM students across all the periods and all the formats. So now we've got these two consistent trends, right? Female students and humanities students tend to get higher grades. But, just finding a pattern is one thing. The researchers wanted to know just how much does this stuff actually matter. So they decided to measure the precise impact. The way the researchers thought about it can be broken down into a pretty simple framework. Step 1. You take a student's basic demographic info, their gender and their academic major. Step 2, the study found that these two factors have a direct, measurable impact on their academic performance. And step 3, this impact holds true no matter what, whether the student is learning in person or online.
So, the big question is, how big of an impact are we talking about? The researchers ran their statistical analysis to really isolate the effect of just these demographic factors. And the number they came back with was, well, it was striking, 13%. So what does 13% actually mean? Well, it means that a student's gender and their choice of major are so influential, so powerful, that just those two things alone can explain up to a seventh of the difference in grades we see between students. Think about that. That is a huge predictor of success, and it doesn't matter if class is online or in person. All right, so let's zoom back out. We've got this surprising result where online learning leads to better long-term GPAs, and we know that certain student demographics consistently have an edge. So what does this all mean for the future of education? What are the big takeaways here? So what are the real-world implications of all this? First off, it's a huge validation for online learning. The data suggests it can be incredibly effective for long-term success. So this means universities should probably start thinking of online courses not just as a pandemic backup plan, but as a really powerful tool in their toolkit. And for students, it confirms what a lot of them already felt, that the flexibility and the accessibility of learning from anywhere can be a major, major advantage for their overall academic journey. And all of this brings us to one final really big thought. This data, it forces us to ask a powerful question. For years and years, education has kind of been this one-size-fits-all thing. But what this great accidental experiment showed us is that different formats work better for different kinds of students. So the challenge now? It isn't to keep forcing students to fit into the system. It's to build a system that actually fits the student. And that is a lesson definitely worth learning.